the end of the day.
It's Mel.
And me. You wanna know
How we did it.
You wanna know how we do it. You wanna know
How
we're
we
doing
doing
it.
it.
Welcome to the Mel and Me podcast.
At the end of the day.
Hello.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's the way to start off the first episode of the new year.
Right.
Let's see. 2024.
Yes.
So we did a little vlog the other day. Just to kind of reach out and touch the people since we hadn't done a podcast in a couple weeks now because of the holidays and everything. So this is the first podcast episode of the new year 2024.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and just kick this off and just get right into it. We have some things going on in the world of the internet space these days.
Yeah, starting the new year out right.
And I was sitting around last night just thinking about, because we had some episodes that we have on the table to do, different ideas that we have, but I was sitting around and it just dawned on me that what, we need to just go ahead and do this.
Right.
Because hell, everybody else is talking about it.
it.
So we might as well go ahead and get on
Put
here.
our 2 cents in on it too.
Put our 2 cents on it too. Because we have our ideas about things. I don't know that your viewpoint on it, your viewpoints will be exactly the same as mine. Although, let's just be honest. We sit around and we watch this stuff on TV, YouTube. Of course, I'm on the internet, on social media. You're not.
Right.
But, we discuss this stuff, right? We have our laughs and whatever about it, just like everybody else does. So we just going to come on out here and just kick it around and chop it up and just kind of share our perspective on things.
Yeah.
And so we are talking about this first episode of 2024. We just going to get into it. I entitled it, I just thought it would be cool to come up with a title of Is a Pimp Down? I want to ask y'all out there, is a pimp down? And of course, we are talking about none other than the Katt Williams debacle. That's all over the internet. Got everybody and their mama in their feelings.
Everybody taking
sides up. It's a whole tribal thing. It's crazy as hell, to be honest, in my opinion.
It is.
But it's all good. So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So the timing, of course, like we say, is just like it's the way it kick off New Year.
Right.
And I guess this whole thing is that everybody's they're kind of dubbing 2024 as how did I hear it put, the year of truth.
Yeah. Breaking
of course we wrapped up 2023 with all the revelations about P. Diddy and all the stuff going on with him and the Cassie lawsuit, and of course that almost helped to kind of usher in this new era that we're in right now, where everybody feels the need to put everybody on blast and stuff, right? Yeah. And so we got Katt Williams, who's
came with it,
up and doing his thing on the Club Shay podcast, right?
Yeah, we watched the whole thing too. It was long.
Yeah, 2 hours and 46 minutes or whatever it was.
46 minutes of him bringing it.
Yeah, so let's just get into it. But so first, what I want to do though, because we're going to put a disclaimer at the front of this this episode, because I know obviously I watch this stuff transpire on social media from within my own social media circle. So obviously I have a crop of people in my friends list, that I'm, that I'm looking at comments, not only there, but on Instagram and on YouTube, the comments and those types of things. You just have that whole thing in place. So the disclaimer is, everybody has their own opinions about things.
Right.
Right. And we're all entitled to our opinions.
Oh yeah. 'Cause
I have my opinions and my viewpoint just like everybody else.
Right.
Right. So I just want to make sure that, hey, this is nothing for anybody to take personal out there.
Right.
You know, people want to choose up sides or whatever.
We just giving our perspective.
I just, you know,
That's it.
I tend to like to look at things from an objective point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
You know, I have my assessments of things and that type of stuff. But, you know, at the end of the day, we just have to be honest. If we say we're in the year of truth, then
Right.
let's just be truthful. Let's just be honest. Let's
Right.
not be biased about things, right?
Right.
And whether you see good or bad on either side, call it out.
Right.
Right? So that
If you like the person or you don't particularly care for the person, that shouldn't come into play.
yeah.
You know?
And so, you know, let me just establish up front. I'm a Katt Williams fan.
Yeah, we like him.
I like him as a comedian.
Yeah.
Always have.
Right.
You know, over the years, he's kind of changed a little bit as far as his level of comedy, you know.
Right.
But overall, I like Katt Williams as a comedian.
Yeah.
And I think he's very talented. I think he brought something new
Yeah.
to the game when he showed up with his whole act.
He sure
Very
did.
funny.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
funny.
I agree.
As far as some of the people that he went after, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a Steve Harvey fan.
Me either. And that's just
We
real
don't
talk.
really follow him. I kind of don't like Steve Harvey, to be honest.
I
As
never
a
thought he
comedian,
was funny.
Yeah,
That's just me personally.
Yeah,
I never
as a
thought he was
comedian,
funny.
I think he is. I've always looked at him as being a bit overrated as a stand-up comedian.
Yep.
You know, as a show host, yeah, he's pretty good.
Right.
You know, and then certain other things I'm not a fan of necessarily, but
Yeah.
you know, because he Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know, and there's just you find that there's a level of arrogance with and that I think that's at the core of this whole entire issue is ego and arrogance.
Yeah.
With this whole entire thing across the board, right?
Yep.
You know, as far as like some of the other comedians that he talked about, I'm just kind of impartial.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to them, I'm not like a big, huge fan of. Now, we do have a favorite comedian, and this is another thing that coincidentally, the one comedian that he had high praise of happens to be our favorite comedian, right? And that would be
DL.
D.L. Hewley, right?
I love DL.
D.L. Hewley is our favorite comedian.
Yes.
Both of our favorite comedians.
Yes.
We've seen him many times over the years, and
Yes.
we relate to his particular comedy and his delivery and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
But I like Cedric the Entertainer. I like Earthquake.
Cedric, Cedric the Entertainer is cool. Earthquake is funny as hell.
Faison is not bad. The other guy he was talking about, I don't know him.
I don't know that he went after Faison, but
He was saying some stuff about
okay. He went
Faison,
after
too.
everybody basically.
But it was only one that I don't think I've heard of him. I don't really know him.
But the thing is that I've seen a lot online where people say stuff like, "Oh, I see you upset because," not saying it to me, but I've seen it said to other people. "Oh, I see you upset because he obviously hit your favorite comedian." You know, it's like people. It's like a comedian doesn't have that much bearing on my personal life.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like when I see people say that, it's like, why can't people just have an opinion about something or have their own perspective on it and not be, you know, it's like they're taking it personally because Katt spoke truth about a particular comedian, right?
If it's the truth, it's the truth.
So, you know, my whole thing is that I look back to the episode that we did. I think it was episode 9 that talked about cultism and the cult dynamic, right? And we were speaking about it in terms of Deion Sanders and even Donald Trump, because it all of this stuff ties in, together in that regard,
Right.
And so, like I stated on that episode, I have a high sensitivity to cult dynamic, and I told a story about a family friend that ran off and joined the commune, the cult, back in the 80s, right?
Right.
So I've seen up close and personal how that brainwashing affects people. And a lot of people don't like to think that they're brainwashed and they're swept up in the cult dynamic, but it's the individual who's the last person to know, last person to realize and accept that they're swept up in the cult dynamic, right? And so I'm always looking for stuff like that. Or, you know, I just have a high sensitivity to it. So this is one of those times that we're in my opinion, You know, when you look across the internet and you look at the way that people are responding and the level of tribalism that they are falling into over this it's totally insane to me, right? And I sit back and I see many people who are highly intelligent, highly accomplished, you know, certain thoughts expressed about this whole thing. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, we are swept up in the cult dynamic. Now, of course, we're talking about it too, right? So, you know, I mean, we're talking about it because it's something to be talked about.
I mean, we're not upset. I mean, I didn't feel any type of way. Oh, I can't believe he said this about Cedric the Entertainer or Earthquake or whoever. He could have been Ricky Smiley, whoever. I mean, I'm not feeling any type of way about it. I'm just looking like, wow, I had no idea all that was even going on and that these things were occurring or that he felt that way. I mean, I'm looking at it that way. I'm like, who knew all that stuff was happening? Yeah.
So real quick, before one thing that I'm always bad about in the past year, I'm just going to go ahead and throw out there and have everybody to like, share, and subscribe and comment on the video. I'm sure we'll probably get some thumbs down on this one. Maybe, I don't know, you know, somewhere across the internet that people might thumbs down because they may not like our particular position or perspective on things. But hey, that's okay. Not everybody's going to like everything all the time. And if you disagree, you know, if you want a thumbs down just because you don't like my position, then whatever. So it's that I think I posted on a random post out there I saw on a thread on one of the social media sites. I said I characterized it as us as a society being in a how did I put it? I said we're in a moment. Right, I say, and we are, you know, and as I alluded to a few minutes ago, we're talking about what happened with Diddy and the revelations there and stuff like that. You know, it's like, I just think that we are in a time where people are so frustrated with those larger powers, people who are elite and who have, you know, immense power and immense wealth and stuff like that. And we know what it's all about when you get to certain levels. Like they always talk about, it's levels to this. You know, we know that the higher you go up in levels in life, especially from a, you know, an economics perspective and a power perspective, that they're just things available to you
that's not available
to the next person. Right? And so I think there's a level of resentment that settles in to us that we don't acknowledge, you know, we don't readily acknowledge. But, you know, and so when we get in these moments where people are exposed, that's kind of like a vindication for us. It's like there's a level of satisfaction, I think, that we get from that, from seeing people fall. You know, and so we rally around it. So when we see that train wreck, that car wreck happening, we all run to it and we like, yeah, you know, and I think that's one of those moments that we're in. And so, you know, and then too, people along with that, people need a champion. People love a champion. They love the underdog, right? And so a lot of times when we see someone that we feel, you know, is speaking for us or whatever.
Saying something that we really want to say, but maybe not, we don't feel comfortable with saying, and just like, oh, okay, that's really what I was thinking, what I want to say, but he or she is doing it for me. And then they pretty much ride the coattails of that person and go rah, rah, rah for them. Or
this is my particular viewpoint, and this powerful person that has a platform lines up with that. So I'm all in with it. You know, and so that's just where we are. I think in this time and in this particular situation, and that's why you see people lining up on different sides of the issue and taking it rather personal. And from my perspective, in a sense, lionizing. You know, it's like you're lionizing, you know, a particular individual. It's almost like I refer to, like, they didn't turn Katt Williams into the Dalai Lama. You know, I mean, really, I that's the way I see it, because you hear people saying stuff like, you know, oh, they're acknowledging, you know, what a genius he is and how, you know, he's spoken pure 100% unadulterated truth, which I know is bullshit. You know, and I'm going to give some examples of that in shortly. You know, again, it's just about being objective. You know, it's like we can support things and we can agree with things without just being totally brainwashed,
Yeah,
you know, about certain things. And
you can't take everything at face value that someone says. Period.
yeah, none of us is walking around with 100% gospel truth inside of us.
Right. I mean, you
know.
got people that over exaggerate, and I mean, some of it may be truth, some of it may be exaggerated, and I think that needs to be understood and called out when you see and observe it. And I think some people don't like to acknowledge that, rather than saying that, okay, maybe some of what he said was true and some of it was exaggerated. It's like either he was telling the truth or he's lying. There's no in between. Right. And I don't necessarily take that position.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, you let some folks tell it. This Katt he's the second coming of Christ almost. No, seriously.
Wow.
What, second, would it be third, second? When is he coming back again?
Right. Right.
Anyway,
yeah.
but
yeah,
second coming.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So yeah, man. So and then I think I can also relate to it, because of the fact that I myself, as we know, as you and I know, and as some people know, have done amateur comedy, right? Starting from many years ago. I've been out there, and I've seen up close and personal, even in the recent past. When I travel to some place, to a comedy club, I fell into the politics of comedy, and I can tell you, man, this stuff is crazy. Not only entertainment business, but especially comedy, and we're seeing it play out now. There's a lot of beef in comedy. And I'm talking all the way from the highest levels down to the lowest levels. The politics is crazy. And the cutthroat nature is crazy. And the backbiting and the pettiness is absolutely insane. So I can identify with a lot of this stuff on many levels, to be totally honest about it. And so I can kind of see, where a lot of this stuff comes from. Now again, I'm a small time dude,
Right.
really a nobody, if we just want to really be honest about it. And I'm glad, with really looking at this situation that I've always taken comfort in having corporate America pay my bills.
Yeah.
Because I ain't never had to worry about, this kind of stuff. Because when you get the politics and all the cutthroat and backbiting and the pettiness and stuff like that, I can always bring my ass home.
Yeah.
Lay in my bed, get up in the next morning and sit in front of my computer and let that impressive W-2 do its thing. Right?
Right.
I don't need all of that crap.
It's crazy.
Right? So because I think sometimes it can, if you're not careful, because I felt this. It can place a bitterness inside of you. It really can. And it does. And
When
I
you see
think
the politics of it, you're saying?
yes, absolutely. When you see how petty people are and how people operate from that position of deficit rather than abundance, as I like to say, there is enough to go around for everybody. But we get into this mode of wanting to hoard it for ourselves and our little folk here.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Right.
And when you're an outsider and when you're not in a clique, they want to keep you at arm's length. And not only that, but they want to sabotage you. People will sabotage you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like that in comedy. It's like that in music. That's just the way the entertainment business is.
Yeah.
Again, at all levels. And that's no different than what we're seeing here. And so, we as outsiders are people who are not in that world, right? We latch on to that stuff. We get caught up in the soap operas of it all. And we become emotionally invested into it.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's important that we engage in critical thought around these things.
Yeah.
Critical thought and objectivity. Dissect stuff.
Right.
You can't just take anything that anyone says
Right.
as the total gospel, because everybody has their own motive.
And then if you were not there to witness it yourself, then, like they said, it's always three sides to the story, And so I just think, you can hear from all sides and then, like you say, be able to be objective as you're listening to each side that's being presented.
Yeah. So, so we had the podcast, the Club Shay podcast, right? I mean, overall, obviously it was a good episode. It's probably going to be one of his most probably his most popular episode
Yeah, I think that's
going
what
forward
they said.
in
Yeah.
history
Mm-hmm.
in a relatively short time.
Yeah.
But you know, the brother went in on everybody from Ricky Smiley to Cedric the Entertainer to Steve Harvey to Kevin Hart to who else?
Earthquake.
Earthquake.
The black and
Michael Blackson. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he went in on everybody, man.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I just, my assessment of what I've seen of Katt over the years, and again, I'm looking at him through the eyes of one who can relate. As even though I'm not a professional comedian, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pretty funny dude actually when I want to be.
Right.
And I'm a great writer.
Yeah.
In many regards, right?
Yep.
At least I think so.
Yeah, me too.
But and so I can relate
Mm-hmm.
through that. And with that, I've watched him over the years. And I have seen, you know, his act, how it has changed, how it has evolved, you know, and also just his general celebrity, if you will. I've seen the changes in him, right? And I am certain, based upon what I've witnessed over the years in him, and just following him, just really appreciating him as a comic, right? I'm convinced that there's obviously some things in the industry that has taken place that has caused him to feel slighted.
Yeah.
You know, maybe his star, you know, hasn't risen as fast and as high as it should have for whatever reason. We don't know all the inside workings of that whole thing. Of course, we have a better idea now.
Yeah.
With what he's put forth, but there are obviously some powerful people in the industry who hasn't shown him the love that he feels that he deserves.
Right.
And the way that he processes it, from what I see, and this is based on what I've seen him put forth to people from his own mouth, and just the air that he has about it when he does so. He does not feel that people respect his genius as a comedian, right? And excuse me, as an artist, we'll just say.
Yeah.
Not necessarily as a comedian, but as an artist and as a mind, because that's the way he presents himself.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the honest to God truth.
Yeah.
And so with that, I think he does harbor a lot of bitterness about that. And it comes out. He makes that very clear.
Oh, yeah.
He has a personal vendetta that he's carrying out, and that's why he lined them all up. And he took shots at all of them. Right? He spoke to watching the show and watching all these different comedians on there, and they're coming on there saying certain things.
Yeah, and his words were lying.
And he said they were lying. And so he felt he needed to come on there and he needed to respond. Right?
Right.
And so when I saw, I would see people on social media would take shots at the people that he talked about that came back and responded, right? So I'm trying to figure out, how is it that we somehow see something wrong in an individual who responds to something that Katt said, when Katt's whole premise from coming on the podcast in the first place was because he saw somebody saying something in it, you know, and not necessarily
about him,
not necessarily
but about a
him.
situation that was not accurate.
Didn't even have to be about him, but just talking about their own comedy career.
Yeah.
And it not sitting well with him because he doesn't feel like they are on the same level as him. Right?
Yeah.
So he's like, how is it that this person has this level of success, but I'm a real comedian? If you line up across me, I'll make you look less than each time because I'm a true comedian. You're not funny. I am. Yeah. That was his whole angle. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I just, you know, when you look at that, it's like, you know, it's like you can see the personal vendettas playing out, you know, and I just feel like there's a level of narcissism in Katt, you know, and I posted something on my social media. I think it was yesterday, where I said I said something to the effect of, few things are more effective at pulling in the masses as charisma and narcissism, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at that, if you consider that charisma on the one hand and narcissism, when you think about like mega preachers, say for instance, pimps in the pulpit, right? They're always characterized as being charismatic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you think about shady politicians,
Yeah.
they're always characterized as
Narcissistic.
charismatic.
And some of them narcissistic too.
If you think about pimps, who is more narcissistic and charismatic than a pimp?
Yeah.
I'm not a pimp, by the way. That was just my little thing there. But no, but seriously, who is more charismatic and narcissistic than a pimp? Now, coincidentally, that's kind of been Katt's whole image, if you will. If you think back to the Pimp Chronicles, like that's why I titled this thing "Is a Pimp Down?"
Yeah.
You know, because that has always been his bread and butter, is this kind of mythical,
Yeah.
you know, pimp
Yeah.
kind of dude, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's why he has always been a good fit for that type of
roles.
presentation, because that is naturally who he is. There's definitely a level of charisma to him, you know, because people sit and talk about, oh, you know, Katt told the 100% unadulterated truth because look at how calm he was. He was so measured in his words and well-spoken.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, the guy has charisma.
Yeah.
You know, he's a wordsmith, right? Now, you know, again, it's something that I can appreciate, right? Because I can give you charisma. You know, I'm a wordsmith, but there's also a lot of mud on me too.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's my point. Just because you're charismatic, you know, that is not soft-spoken wordsmithing is not a testament to absolute truth.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It is not.
Yep.
I'll say it again. Soft-spokenness and wordsmithing is not a testament to absolute truth, people. Because, hey, like I said, I can sit here and give you charisma and lie to your damn face.
We got
Many of us
politicians
can
and do it every day, all day.
do it every day, right? So I think we have to be careful about that.
Right.
You know, when I looked at Katt, now let me just say that I am not saying at all that some of the things at least that Katt Williams was saying doesn't have truth to him.
Right.
I'm not saying he's not justified to some degree in the feelings that he holds about the industry and those who he deemed to be representations of the industry or manifestations of the industry that have served as roadblocks to him.
Yeah, basically
as
trying
an
to
artist.
keep his career stagnated too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not saying that it's all.
Right.
I'm not saying that it's at all.
Right.
What I am saying is that we have to be objective and we have to think critically about things. And so there are some things that Katt's and this speaks to the level, I think, of narcissism within Katt that I detect in him. And this is not something that just came about in this particular Club Shay episode with me.
Because we've seen other interviews of him.
Just over the years. You know, again, it's a part of his comedy routine as well, right? But yeah, different interviews that he's held with different people. You know, the narcissism comes out, and it comes out in any time. Comes down to this, and I kind of place this in terms of like Donald Trump, because he's the prime example and most clear example of this thing.
Yes.
And that has a lot to do with the time that we're in. It's just in the damn air.
Right.
When someone has to tell you how great they are constantly and loudly, right?
Yeah.
That's narcissism.
Yeah.
As I sat here and I was thinking about it as I was even just speaking a couple of minutes ago, and I'm speaking in terms of this podcast and trying to make the point of being able to identify, right, with and why I'm able to look through the lens that I am. You know, specifically when I spoke about being charismatic and stuff like that, right? You know, you realize certain things about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but even as I was speaking that, it wasn't sitting well with me, but I have to say it because we're doing this podcast, right? But there are things that he said. For instance, he spoke of being a kid, right? From the time he was 8 years old, and told an interesting story about growing up in his parents' home and stuff like that, and how they were Jehovah's Witnesses and those types of things. But he talked about doing like mission trips to Haiti and speaking multiple languages, and you know, he was the primary interpreter and he was the one handling everything, this and that for the entire family. Yeah. He was like 8 years old, he said.
Yeah.
8, 10 years old or whatever.
Oh, they're making $2,000 or something.
Yeah,
right?
but and so I'm doing the math now. Katt is our age. He's the same age as we are, pretty much. He's definitely your age, maybe a year younger than me. And so I'm thinking back to the time. Right? He said something to the effect of, he was up to reading 3,000 books a day. I want to say that again. 3,000 books. Excuse me, not a day. I take that back. I didn't mean to say a day. A year.
A year.
3,000 books a year.
Yeah.
How many days in a year?
365.
365 days in a year. Right? 3,000 divided by 300. Let's just round it down to 300. That would be about, what? 10? 3,000 divided by 3,000 divided by 300. So if there were 300 days in a year, he would have to read about 10 books a day?
Something like that, yeah. At least that.
About 10 books a day.
Yeah, at least that, yeah.
So we're in the internet age right now where you can pretty much find any book online. There's an online version of the book, an electronic version of the book, or there's an audio version of the book.
Yeah.
Now, when you and I were 8 years old, when some of y'all out there who are my age were 8 years old where there was no internet.
9.
What was the only way you could read a book?
In the library.
You either going to buy a book, and we were broke. We were broke. You're going to go to the library.
You're going to the library to rent it. Yeah.
So
that means you living in the library.
You got to, how many hours you think you're probably sleeping a day back then? I mean, we don't sleep much these days, but back then we were probably.
Back then I was sleeping a good 8-10 hours.
So that takes away from the 24 hours in a day. I just want to know, people out there, how in the hell can anybody, let alone an 8-year-old, because we know he left his family's crib at 13. So it was before 13.
Yeah.
So I don't know about, but when I was 12, 13, I know what I was doing.
I was outside playing.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't homeless.
Right.
He said he was homeless, but he also said that he lived a very devout Jehovah's Witness life with his family, which means his life was probably pretty regimented during those times. So I just want to know where you find time to read 3,000 books.
All right.
And how can anyone possibly read 3,000 books in a year? If anybody out there reading 3,000 books a year, that you're going out spending the money, purchasing a book, or going to the library to pull books to read on that level, 10 books a day,
or reading them online.
Holla at your boy, let me know.
Right.
That's all I'm saying, people.
Right.
That was extremely that's a hyperbolic thing. Yeah. It's extremely hyperbolic. And why?
Right.
He could have very well acknowledged that he wasn't reading 3,000 books a year, but he sat with a straight face and said that.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to establish his genius.
Yes.
Because that's what geniuses do, right?
Yeah, and I think they even spoke of his IQ or something too.
He spoke of his IQ. You know, I have
he's
this
in a menace.
IQ.
He said he's part of it. Yeah. So those type of things.
But when you hear stuff like that, it's like, okay, you have to look at, to me, it's a credibility thing. You know, you can't sit and tell me that you spitting truth, but then you're gonna sit and tell me that you are reading 3,000 books a year as a preteen. We'll just generalize it and say we'll just broaden it out and not down to any particular age, but we know we are working with preteen years. Okay, I just don't know any child wired that way.
Right.
And if you are that child, I want to know why why is there no cure for cancer yet? Because you should have been then developed it by now. If you were reading 3,000 books
I guess for
a year.
me, my thing was, I looked at it as, if he was coming on to set the record straight because of the things that the other comedians came on and said that he felt was not truthful or accurate, to me, a lot of that other stuff he was saying really didn't have anything to do with that. If he was coming to clear the air about the role with Ricky Smiley or
I see what
whatever,
you're saying.
Earthquake taking Cedric the Entertainer,
Right.
still in the joke or whatever, him reading 3,000 books a day, you making $2,000 a day or whatever the case, to me, none of that has any bearing on the reason why he said he wanted to come and sit down
Right.
on Shannon Sharp's show. And that's how I was looking. What does this have to do with any of that?
Well, in fairness, if you recall, Shannon, he went down. He had on his cue card or whatever you want to call it, his prompt card. It was probably a pre-written question because he went down, listened, said, "Well, let me understand this. You did this. You're this. You're this. You're this." Now, obviously, he got the information from somewhere,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sure no different than we do on our podcast. We're going to have a brief, right? You're going to kind of have a brief so that you know where you're going, so that things, flow decently, right? So I'm sure there was some of that, but I guarantee you, I'm willing to bet, I'll say, that he and or his people, and I would say him because he makes himself the focus, that he probably made sure that that's what was going to be on Shannon's card, so that the conversation would go in that direction.
Oh, okay.
Right. We do this,
Yeah.
so we know how this thing kind of works, and so, but yeah, I just, what purpose did it serve, right? And so let's look at that. Let's look at that $2,000 a day thing, because that's another thing that he said that just didn't sit well with me. Okay, so let's give him the fact that he hitchhiked, from wherever it was, from Ohio down to Florida, as a 13-year-old, where he ended up homeless. First thing, I ain't gonna lie, first thing I thought about was what trucker picked him up, picked him up off the side of the road, a 13-year-old kid, and literally human trafficked him.
Yeah.
Is what happened.
Yeah.
You got somebody that human trafficked a kid across state lines that they probably could have been prosecuted for.
Yeah, well, back then, they probably weren't even looking at human trafficking. I mean, I know it's big and relevant today, but yeah, back then, yeah.
But so he ends up in Miami, he says, and he makes a statement of, he said, I was making $2,000 almost every day. Yeah. Almost every day, stealing radios.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at that. Let's go back. Let's go back to that. Let's go back to, let's say if he was 10, that would have been around, 1980, 81, somewhere around the 81, 82 time frame. We know that, the booming system, was a thing of the 90s. That's when everybody, got into getting the expensive stereo systems in their car and all that kind of stuff. The big kicker boxes and all the kind of big bass and stuff like that, right? Late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
Okay. So we know that back around 1981, 82, mugs was still rolling with 8 tracks in their cars. Right? People still had big ass 8-track tapes sticking in the car. What cars had stereo equipment in them back then to where you would a day $2,000 a day as a 13-year-old,
right? What pawn shop was about to really get you?
You know how many damn cars he would be having to hit to, you know what I'm saying?
Right. I thought about that too when he said that.
So again, I have to look at that and say, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Or as we like to say, that's cap. And so the way that I'm processing it is, how is it that people are listening to this and it's not registering with them to say, you know what? This dude's on some bullshit right here.
People probably thinking, oh my God, I can't believe it. He was homeless, 13. He's selling, making his money, taking care of himself. People thinking from that perspective.
Yeah, we get so swept up in the grandiosity of things and the slick talk and the charisma that sometimes that stuff goes by us. And again, to me, I look at that and say, you know what? Something's off here. because there's a level of erraticism of being erratic. That's in play there. That's erratic. That's erratic speech and behavior. That you would sit and you could go there mentally to where you would feel okay and you could feel confident saying something like that, knowing that when you really dissect it and you do the math on it, it doesn't make sense.
Because then if someone was to fact check it, if Shannon had came back and even asked a question to double up behind that to confirm it, then he would have been put on the spot. If
it was me, as soon as he started talking about speaking all these multiple languages, French and Creole, I'd have been like,
hey, do a demonstration.
I'd been like, speak some French. Say something to me in French. If I were to say to you, that's how I would have been. Yeah, I'd been like, hey, dude,
I would have been interested to hear.
You a genius like that?
I wanted to hear it myself, and I wanted to interview on him.
You speaking multiple languages like that? Say something in Creole.
What you working with?
I know a couple. I know a few Creole phrases because when I went to college, my friends that I hung out with, they were islanders. My boy from the Bahamas, and the offshoots from him, his friends. So naturally, I became friends with them, and they were from places like Haiti. So I know some of the slang, phrases that they say and stuff like that. But I'd have been like, yo. I would have said something to him and see how he responded if it was me.
I wanted to hear myself, but just watching.
But I've never, I've never heard him, speaking in foreign languages before. Not to say he can't, but I'm just saying, we just thinking back to that whole line of conversation. That's where I would have gone. But you're right, it probably would have put him on the spot.
For sure.
But when you get that stuff and you hear some of the far-fetched things, it has to register with you. And to me, it's a credibility thing because that tells me that you're engaging in hyperbole. And hyperbole is oftentimes, it comes as a package deal with narcissism. And again, let's go to Donald Trump. This is what he does.
All day, every
He'll
day.
tell you that, he speaks of his, of how he has the highest IQ of any president, how he does this and he's worth that. Yeah. He constantly tells you how great he is. I ain't gonna say stretch the truth. Right. He lies.
Right.
He outright lies.
Right.
And so when I'm listening to certain things from people and I see these types of things in play, my mind immediately starts going there. Yeah. I start processing. It's like where does this come from? Because it's not necessarily you can hammer home the idea that you're intelligent without engaging in hyperbole.
Yeah, true. True.
I don't have to sit here and sell you some far-fetched ass story about something that I've done or something that I've accomplished in order to convince you that I'm talented or I'm smart or whatever.
Right.
But I just think narcissism sometimes, when it is embedded in us, for whatever reason, whether it, be some mental situation or whatever, it brings those things out of you and you lack the ability to control it. It's impulsive.
It's automatic.
Right? And again, this is just something that I have seen in Katt over the years.
Yeah.
Feel how you want to feel about it. The brother just brings a certain thing about himself. And again, it's not to take away from his level of talent.
Right.
Because he's obviously a talented comedian. But just got to keep it real.
Yeah.
And so those were a couple of things that I sat and watched him say. And when I see people comment online in the different forums that I've been in, because it just hasn't been my Facebook page. So anybody on my Facebook page, if you think I'm talking about you, I'm not. It's something that I've seen just various places. But yeah, so it's just one of them things that I can't allow myself to become swept up in the idea that this guy is somehow achieving prophet status or nirvana, if you will, like Buddha or something.
Right.
Instead of he's speaking 100% unadulterated truth when, like you said, we weren't there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, we've heard some of the stories and we heard some of the responses and stuff like that. And hey, some of the stuff is valid.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But to speak to this unadulterated truth, because I feel like he's my champion, would be disingenuous on my part, because he clearly told some straight up bonkers ass lies.
But
and
also, I think context is important. You know, when you're telling, if you're going to talk about a situation, give the full context of the situation. It can't be just certain parts of it, because then people walk away with a different understanding of what took place. Everything needs to be talked about. And I think with the situation, even with the Ricky Smiley, with the role with Money Mike or whatever, it appears as if some critical pieces were missing in that story.
Okay.
And so when the rebuttals came in, then it's like, oh, okay. Not to say that he was lying about everything, but some stuff was portrayed differently. Let me state that.
Right. So the one thing that I felt very good about from the beginning, with this whole thing, because I felt like I knew where it would go ultimately, because of the way that it was pushed from the beginning. Oh, we about to set the internet on fire, blah blah blah. And so yeah, I knew that most of this stuff was going to be very viable, right? Especially when you start making comments about the movie and what transpired with the movie. It's like, oh, that's easy to answer, because the producers and the directors and other people, they can come out and say what really was, right? And that's another thing that's problematic, because what came out in, let's just take the Ricky Smiley rebuttal. And I have to give, seriously, I got to give Ricky Smiley credit.
I do.
Because when we watched that, the brother came out, he wasn't bitter about it. He stepped right up and said, hey man, listen, I whatever the brother feels the way he feels, but here's what happened. You know, he may not be aware of this, and he prefaced it. Yeah. He's like, I don't know if Katt was aware of this, but I'll audition for the role. Yeah. You know, and because Katt Williams, he went to the extreme. He basically made it, again, it was his ego that was bruised, because he was like, who made a Santa Claus suit for me? You know, he tried to make it seem like, you know, there was no way in hell that you even came close to touching this part. Right. When it was proven to not be the case. Right. Because Ice Cube, credit to him. Credit to him. You could tell that he was kind of uncomfortable about it. He tried to be calm about everything and make sure everything, you know, stayed cool. Right. But he was just basically saying, hey man, listen, we did indeed audition Ricky for the part.
He confirmed basically what Ricky said.
So Ricky wasn't lying about that.
Not at all.
But he's like, we didn't like him for the part. Right. You know, because he just didn't pull the part off. And when we got Katt in there, credit to Katt. He did his thing. You know, and so, but Katt, he talked about and also the other thing that Ice Cube said was like, hey, you know, I don't even roll like that as far as the rape scene in the movie and stuff like that. But the way Katt put it on Ricky, he tried to use that to diminish Ricky's position, to be like, hey, there's no way in hell that this guy came and touched that part, and it was all my part. Another thing that Ice Cube said was that the part was already written.
But he did say
it was already Katt added to it
because he was so good in the role,
and that's going to tie in to some of the beef that Katt has with some of the other comedians with the joke stealing. Because when I take and equate it to that, Ice Cube told everybody the script was written for Money Mike. There's some things that Katt did that he added to that role that made it a classic role. Cool. I totally get that. Yep. Right? So, but Katt was very adamant about that. He was a total creator of that role. Yeah. Every bit of dialogue he wrote, again, that's that narcissism. Yeah. And that is that hyperbole. It was all about me. It's all me.
Right, and there was not,
like Drake said, it's all me. That's the whole thing. If the whole ball of wax was him, and that's the way that he portrayed it, and that's what the public has eaten up. They've eaten that shit up. Yeah, you know.
And Ice Cube said, and Ice Cube, that was his movie. So
why can't we just be objective about it, right? And say that, hey, the brother has some legitimate gripes. Yeah. I do not doubt because of the dynamics in the business that Ricky Smiley might have had some hurt feelings. And I was hoping that Ice Cube might have spoken to that. But again, he's just trying to keep things on the level and keep things cool.
He just wanted to clarify those two things, and he said that's all he was going to do.
I have no problem believing that Ricky might have thrown a bit of a hissy fit. when he did not get that part, because maybe he went into the situation wanting that part.
Yeah.
You know, and it may not necessarily have to do anything with Katt Williams
Right.
getting it, but the fact that Ricky thought that he might have had it and he didn't get it, and so
Right.
his feelings were hurt. But it worked out for him.
Yeah.
And but he was honest about that.
He was.
You know what I'm saying? As far as that, hey, at the end of the day, I'm glad that I got the role that I got. Katt did a great job in that role. You know, everything worked out great.
Yep.
You know, but I don't doubt that Ricky might have had some hurt feelings, and he might have been a little bit in his feelings on the set.
Yeah.
You know, until everything settled down and they coalesced and they got, because that's the way that business works.
Yeah.
But I think it's unfair that we take and throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, hey, this dude is told straight up all facts. You know, and so now I don't like Ricky Smiley. I don't respect Ricky Smiley.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Again, it's about objectivity. You know, so and I knew when Ricky Smiley manager came on, who was his manager at the time, and spoke to it and say, hey, here's the way the whole thing worked. You know, and then they showed Ricky in the Money Mike get up for the audition.
And when Ricky Smiley
You know?
spoke, he didn't skip a beat either. He was nice and calm.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't stuttering for the
He was
words.
he was
or
very
anything.
gracious. He was very gracious
he
to
laid it
Katt.
right on out.
And that's just who Ricky Smiley is. I mean, at the end of the day, that's who he is. And so
I mean, but my point in saying all that, if we going by, okay, well, yes, he was very, you know, his demeanor was very nice
Sure.
and very charismatic and all that. So was Ricky.
yeah.
So do we not believe Ricky, or do we believe Ricky? Because if we saying that, then you know what I mean?
My problem is the degree. And
Yeah.
my problem is a hyperbole and a narcissism. Again,
Right.
I go back to the thing of cult dynamic. That's my thing. I do not care to get swept up in the cult dynamic.
Right.
I care to stand at the 20,000 foot level and just look at things for what they really are. Realize there is some bitterness there. There's some beef going on between all of these comics. Of what I've seen is you have, and I've looked at some of the other comedians and other commentators, YouTubers and stuff out there, content creators and stuff, and you kind of have this thing of the renegade versus the establishment people. You know, like you have certain comedians that's going to side up with Katt, and those are who consider themselves or who operate more like renegades. Those are the anti-establishment, anti-industry type people. You know, people who are viewed as outsiders, people who are not the Steve Harveys, and people who are not the Kevin Harts. You know, and so I can imagine how there's a level of resentment there. You know, again, I'm not a huge Kevin Hart fan either. You know, I don't really. We've watched maybe one or two of his stand-ups. I don't think he's necessarily all that funny. He's not gut-bustingly funny.
No.
You know, but you know, he has an act that he does.
Yeah.
But again, you know, that's the way it kind of sides up that way, right?
Right.
But, you know, I've always realized that these things are verifiable. And so that's kind of the way I approach things. I'm like, you know what? It's going to come out.
Yeah.
It's going to come out.
Yeah.
But, you know, even when things come out, some people are going to be so emotional about it because Katt is their champion.
Yeah.
And so they're not going to move on it. No different than Trump.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. You can sit and show
all the
you
proof.
can sit and show an insurrection in place. You can show the goofy ass dude with the Viking hat on with the horns on, beating on the podium in the House of Representatives and the Senate chamber, and you'll still get people say it was just a friendly family tour that took place, and you know, and none of the nation's politicians had to evacuate and go underground,
even though they showed you them all on the floor hiding, and
you know, feet kicked up on the damn Nancy Pelosi's desk, right? But you'll still get people to deny what happened. Same thing with this Katt Williams situation, because people are so emotionally invested into this shit that they're not going to move off of it, and to me, that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Because
once the truth has been presented to you, then you need to accept it for what it is. I mean, it would be, you know, it's different if, okay, you heard something, you don't really have all the facts, but then I think once the facts and it's been proven that this is really what occurred, then it should be accepted as that's the fact.
Yeah. So, you know, you look at the personal stuff, man, that exists between, you know, him and Cedric the Entertainment. And of course, Cedric had a prebuttal, and I went back and reviewed the show that Shannon did with Cedric a year ago, where he presented this whole claim of Katt stealing, him stealing Katt's joke. And I watched the video the other day of both jokes being done side by side. Yes, there were similarities, but again, being objective, and again, being a comic myself, as unaccomplished as I am as a comic, you know, but being able to look through that lens, I can acknowledge that, yes, those jokes were similar. Now, I don't know which joke is his word against his, because Cedric says that, you know, that joke was performed even before Katt did his on Comic View. I like to see, you know, some footage of Cedric maybe doing that joke. But I will say this, when you think back to what Ice Cube said about what Katt brought to the Money Mike role in the additional writing that he did for it.
Right.
Okay, the way that I saw those two jokes when Cedric did his joke on Kings of Comedy and what Katt did on Comic View was that, let's just give it to Katt that Cedric borrowed from that joke. Okay, the only thing that I saw in common with that joke was they were both sitting on a stool, pantomiming being inside of some type of vehicle. With Katt, it was a car where he had a little stick shift or whatever. Now, from what I saw in Cedric took that joke, let's just say even if he did steal or borrow from that joke, he embellished upon that joke for Kings of Comedy. And because I remember watching it on Kings of Comedy and thinking, this is funny as hell.
Right.
But what set it apart, what really pushed that joke was Cedric, okay, took that joke and made it into a spaceship. So we're going to the moon, we're going into outer space, but this is how black folks are going to do this. You know, and then he took the cigarette. He took the old school dude. How when you come up, put a cigarette in his mouth, and you take an old car, like he said, a deuce and a quarter, and how much you have to work with it, right? With the heavy brakes and the gear shift on the steering wheel, and how you got to wrench that thing out of play. And so the whole visual that he created with that, and then with the cutie pie thing, and so you could visualize that thing. And now, keep in mind, you have to go back to the idea that this is not a car, but a spaceship.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So me as a critical thinker, I can look at that and appreciate that and say, you know what? It's a different joke.
Yeah.
Because you can take and push this idea of being in a car or whatever, but to take a spaceship, to take and put a cigarette in your mouth, to take and play off the fact that cars were so old back in the day that this is a spaceship that's like a deuce and a quarter spaceship, that you gotta work with this, and you got the fuzzy steering wheel and how you lean it. It was funny as hell, right? So again, that's just being objective about it. Now, I can speak to stealing jokes because me, even as an amateur comic, I literally had, and it was in a white club first and a black club. I've had my joke stolen right in front of my damn face. I was on stage and did this routine where I was telling the girl, she was a Jewish chick. She was a comic, a so-called comic, but she was kind of managing the show. And, you know, when you're a comedian, especially when you're a comedian coming up, a lot of times they give you a signal that your time is almost up. You got 1 minute left. You need to wrap up your set, right? And so a lot of times they'll either flash a light at you, you know, or something, give you a signal. And so I did this bit where I told the chick, I told the girl, I asked her, I say, I basically told her, instead of flash me with a light next time, I said, flash me. Right? I would prefer if I'd much rather you flash me rather than flash me, right? And she had the nerve to get offended. Now, she was a so-called comic that was in the house, that was kind of managing the show, right? But guess what happened after the very next act that came up after me, right? Her partner, who was sitting at the table with her, another Jewish guy. Not that matters. But the club, actually, the club was owned by a Jewish guy. And so that was kind of like the whole little thing, the history of the people on the walls and stuff like that they were Jewish comics. And of course, we know that there's a heavy Jewish presence in comedy in this country. But he came up, and guess what he did to the next comic who was on stage?
Told her to flash him.
No, he
flashed.
He ripped, and this is an old hairy dude with a big belly with kind of a pot gut.
Yeah.
He went up to the stage and he ripped up his shirt and flashed the dude to let him know that his time was up.
Oh my god.
Stole my damn, and guess what happened? The whole damn room.
Laughed.
The whole room went up, right? Because what they did was they made that connection between what I did and what this guy took, but he took and stole my joke. Right? Now, I could get offended by that.
Right.
What he did was he embellished upon my joke. But what that was confirmation within me that I had a good joke. It was a good joke.
Yeah.
It was too much for that girl because
Right.
she became offended for some. I don't.
But
I
saw it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the fact that I was like the only brother in the house that night. I don't know if
Yeah.
it might have been one of them type of situations where she felt uncomfortable because this black man is up there, you know, asking her to flash him.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I kind of felt that could have been in play. But I've had it happen.
Yeah.
You know, and like Cedric the Entertainer said on the interview with Shannon, it happens. It happens all the time.
All of them said it. All the
DL
time.
also acknowledged the same thing.
Yeah.
And so we have to be big enough to realize that it's no different. Like with you and me sitting talking, we have enough conversation with each other. Like a lot of times we say the same thing at the same time. Just like even a second ago, we said DL at the same time because we're both thinking back to the different videos that we watched over the past few days, right?
Yes.
And we think back to how he said the same thing.
Yeah.
And so it's no different in comedy. When you're around people and you're sharing conversations and you're watching stuff, you're gonna have bleed over of ideas.
Oh, yeah.
But it's about taking and building upon it, not necessarily saying I'm never one for taking someone's stuff verbatim outright and just totally duplicating it.
Right.
And he gave an example of, I guess, you know, you've seen like Mark Curry and we're talking about stuff that Steve Harvey did. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
But what I am just saying is that it's nothing. I think to take it as a slight at your genius and to go on such a vendetta about it to where it turns into what it has, to me is just kind of ridiculous.
I think it should probably be taken as a compliment because that means if they want to take it and embellish upon it to make it, you know, to take it even further, that speaks to, like you said, had a good joke.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would somebody even want to embellish upon it? That's how I look at it.
So I'm just looking forward to more stuff coming out. You know, I've seen footage of Kevin Hart, you know, early in his career. You know, you talked about him being an industry plant.
Yeah.
You know, Kevin's been on the scene for a while. He's been paying his dues on the comedy scene. So again, I'm just interested, and more stuff is going to come out. It's like everything is verifiable.
Yeah.
It's just that I just think that, you know, for all the brother's talent and the level of success that he's had, I just think it's unfortunate that we have this going on right now. And again, you know, and people have chosen up sides, you know, regardless of what I might have said on this podcast, folks, I don't have a side. Like I said, I like comedians that, you know, Katt align himself with. I like Katt as a comedian.
Yeah.
But we have to, you know, offer our perspective, and I have to, at least speaking for myself, I have to call it what it is, the way I see it. And so, you know, if individuals out there, I mean, even beyond just my immediate social media network, who might come across this, you know, anybody who comes across this out there on the web, you know, you're entitled to your opinion, you know, but I will not allow myself, I cannot allow myself to become swept up in a cult dynamic or just, you know, to elevate someone to some status of prophet, you know, or genius.
Right.
And, you know, I looked up the definition of genius because that's another thing I hear kicked around by people like him and Kanye West and stuff like that. And if you look up the definition of genius, and I challenge anyone out there, look up the definition of genius. You'd be surprised to learn that genius is not something, or people who are geniuses, it's not something that's there are no unicorns out there. I'll just put it that way. And we are quick to put it on celebrities.
Yeah.
You know, but let me tell y'all something. You have geniuses around you every day that you don't give the credit to. And if you look up the definition, you'll clearly see what I'm talking about. There's nothing special, I think, that Katt presents to us by way of not too many people. You know, now I will honestly say I've had some people that I've listened to, and I was like, you know, like scholars and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, that really moved me. It's like, wow. You know, but I'm not too quick to bestow the title of genius onto anybody that are really doing no different than I. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying I'm all that.
Right.
But I'm saying I know many people.
Yeah.
Not only I, but people that I know and that I sit beside every day or that I mingle with.
Exactly.
I know a lot of geniuses. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I know a lot of geniuses.
Yep.
People who don't even recognize them, who might not recognize themselves as or acknowledge themselves as being a
Because
genius,
people
but they
equate
are.
being a genius by your IQ. Or if your
Not-
IQ, I'm just saying, people, that's what people have grown up to believe. Oh, if your IQ is 160 plus or whatever, then you're considered a genius.
Yeah, but also your status. People are more quick to bestow genius upon people with status than they are the everyday, Joe person
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
who exhibits that same genius.
Yeah.
So that's just my perspective on things.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I can't wait till it blows over. Actually,
Right. We'll be on to the next the next mess.
because man, and I
There's
know I
always
might.
something.
There going to be some folks out there mad at this podcast. If you got a thumbs down it.
It is what it is.
I would hope that it wouldn't be just because I don't know. People.
I'm not worried about it.
So that's it though. It's crazy as hell. We are in the year of truth, as they say. I just feel like with us, 2024 is definitely going to be a year where I just wish with all the things with us being in 2024, especially
Right.
here in these United States.
Right.
I just wish that we exhibited as much interest and fervor
Right. Yes.
toward things that are so much more
Important and critical.
with the stakes being so high as they are. With some of the things going on in the world around us,
Yeah, people need to be weighing
as
in on
we
that.
put toward this
Yes.
debacle.
Yep. All that energy, all that.
It's crazy,
Yep. That's true.
because one thing that 2024 is going to show us, it is going to be the year of truth, and it's going to bring to light, and it's going to put on the table, all of our, all of the things that
it's at stake
come
at this point.
come up as a result of our apathy and our lack of priorities and distractions, like with this.
Right.
It's going to be revealed.
Yep.
It's going to be revealed in this year, as far as where our priorities are. And I just think that the sooner that we can get past this whole debacle, the better off we'll be. But something
Exactly.
tells me that that's not going to happen
Because
because,
the next thing is going to come up and people are going to be talking about that.
yeah, and it's going to continue to string along, and everybody's going to stand their feelings about it and stuff. And I guess technically I'll stand my feelings about it as a result of it, just because of the frustration and the disbelief
Yeah.
behind how much energy that we continue to give to it.
Right.
But again, it's weird. It's, like I say, it's a weird irony because I'll be giving it the same energy with giving my so
I mean, we put our 2 cents out about it now, and
Yep.
I'm done with the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is at this point.
so we'll wrap this up, and so it's been kind of fun, I guess. We'll see how it comes out.
Let's see how it comes out.
So we got to figure out what we're gonna do for our next episode, but we'll get to determine.
Yes.
But I am looking forward to in the coming weeks, next few weeks, we'll be getting away from this place,
Yes.
and we
Thank you.
can go and recharge our batteries and
Yes.
not be concerned about Katt Williams.
Right.
Go to a different
It'll be
life
the
for a little
least
bit.
of my concerns.
Yeah. So we'll just stay looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But hey, at the end of the day, it's
Now.
and me, and this has been the podcast. Everybody take it easy. Don't take it
Holla.
personal.